I'm not a perfectionist at all. Like, I'm literally very like, okay, cool, we're good. Next thing. Like, I'm always moving ahead. And I think that for me, that I'm grateful I'm not a perfectionist because I'm around a lot of them a lot of the time. And sometimes I'm like, oh, you guys could be so much more productive if you just let go a little earlier, because the percentage that something improves when you sit and chew on it for that extra 12 hours is like less than 1%. And it's not that like half a percentage isn't even noticeable by the people who are consuming what you're creating, because they're not just sitting with it, staring at it like you are and obsessing if you're hypothetically a perfectionist. Whereas if you just let it go and kind of put it out and just let people respond to it, I think we can also grow from feedback. So even if something isn't great, even if something isn't perfect, because it never will be, that's the secret. The secret is you can sit and fix it until every single piece is in place and think for like an eighth of a second that it's perfect. Then you put it out there and you're gonna be like, oh, I wish I had changed this, or oh, I knew that wasn't right. And it's never perfect. So believing that you can get there is what slows people down. And so I'm just more like, put it out there, move on to the next thing, put it out there. You'll learn. You'll be like, oh, I would have done that differently. Cool. Now you're already making something new that you can apply that lesson to. If you just sit on the same note for your whole life, you kind of you're limiting yourself and everyone else who gets to consume what you make. Does that make any sense?
I 100% agree. I wonder if it's different for people who are just starting out. Because say you're just starting out, and I'm talking about people who are learning a craft. So if you pick up a camera for the first time and start shooting photos, you don't know that much about the craft. So you're just trying to learn like how to set exposure, how to color correct, how to edit, how to crop, all these different things that you have to learn. And there's like thousands and thousands of tiny details. And when you're trying to learn an application and going through each of the tabs and trying to figure out where everything is, I think it takes a lot of time. And so I wonder if it's actually okay. It's probably not. I don't know. Like you tell me, but it might be okay to spend a little bit extra time when you're just getting started out, like tweaking photos and actually just understanding that that's a process of learning. But at the same time, you got to get past that photo to get to the next. And you're probably going to learn more by working on your 100th photo than working on that one photo 100 times.
Right. And I think, yeah, I mean, when you're learning something new, there is going to be a process to it. So I'm not being an advocate for being sloppy. Y'all, do not be sloppy.
Right. You have to put out good shit.
Yeah.
Like, don't put out crap.
Nope.
You got to use your gut. And you're like, but also there is good enough. You get, like a lot of people talk about the 80-20 principle. So you get 80% done and you're like, that's close enough. That's going to be good. Because also, man, I don't know about you, but I look back at my work from 2 years ago. It's always 2 years. I don't know why. And I'm like, that's garbage. Like, that is the worst. I can't believe clients pay me for some of the videos that I've made. I'm like, did they actually get value from that? Did that actually help their business in any way? It's tough sometimes to look back at it.
Yeah. But, 98.7% is still an A. So
wow,
that's my life mantra.
Yeah. And just keep moving forward. I mean, you're so right in that you just have to just focus on the next project, because even if you hated that last one, I think that's what we were trying to do, is that we realize that like we can get better. You're like, oh, I learned so much from that last project. I can bring that into the next one.
Yeah. And you're not frustrated because you've been sitting with something that feels stale and old. It's kind of like if a woman, let's just take it to,
for instance,
take it to babies for a minute. Let's say a woman's pregnant and she hits 40 weeks and she's like, I'm not done. Give me another minute. And she wants to keep the baby longer and longer and longer. Like, that starts hurting her body because the baby's like too big. And it's like, come on, let the baby fly. Not fly, but free.
Yeah.
And the baby can't start to get to know its life and actually kind of be its own being outside of that space. So it's kind of that same idea of like, let your creativity actually be born into the world. Let other people interact with it. Let them be like, oh, it's cute, or like, ooh, it's kind of weird looking, and let other people start interacting so that whatever you're creating can take on its own persona, so that people can be like, let's say with your podcast, instead of you sitting with it for like 3 years and being like, I'm going to make sure I'm the best podcaster that's ever been born. Instead of being like that, and if you just sat in your room by yourself for 3 years and just like, researched every single like mic you could get, every single light you could get for your videos. If you just sat on it for 3 years and then you released it, everyone would be like, did you just put like a 3-year-old into the world? Like, what just happened? What is this? Like, where did this come from? But when you put it out as an imperfect little being, suddenly everyone can grow with it and get to know it as it grows, so that there's more of that like developmental, it's sort of just, there's more of a loyal fan base because they're like, I remember when he was a baby, instead of it being, I'm making some very strange. That was
a weird metaphor. It was a weird metaphor. I'm not gonna lie, but like the idea is amazing. I mean, the idea it connects with me 100% because when I was starting the podcast, I kind of had this idea. I was like, oh, I should just record 10 episodes. I should. And like, this is advice that I've heard from other people where it's like, oh, you're going to start something. You really want to be consistent with it and you don't want to be overwhelmed. So people say like, just whatever you're making, if you want to release it consistently, make 10 of them and then you can release them every week and then gives you time to make other stuff. I did not do that. Like I just recorded a story. It was a story about the first time I shot a reality show with E. I was just a cam op and then I forgot to hit record. It was a bad day. It was a bad day for me. Yeah. I did the only thing I was supposed to do, which is hit record. And then it was this crazy pivotal scene where this woman was going kind of crazy, yelling about like this talent show that her daughter was in, and she was just losing her mind. And then I forgot to hit record. The producer in my ear was like, that's perfect. Cut, wrap, we're done. And then I was like, oh my God, I didn't even record. And then I was just too timid, whatever it was, too ashamed that I decided not to tell them. And so I never worked with them again. But it was just to let other people know and other creatives know that like this shit happens. Like bad stuff happens when you're making and putting yourself out there in a way that you can fail. And there will be a lot of failures along the way. And a lot of times there's no platform to talk about those things. Sometimes people write about them in Facebook posts, but like a lot of times you generally just put your best stuff out there into the world. So it's nice to be able to share that. So I posted it, put it out there, and then I was like, all right, well, what am I going to do for next week? And then it was a scramble, and I wasn't that consistent for the first 6 months, maybe the first 4 months. But then things started to connect, and I started to pick up the pieces, and now I'm like, I have a lot recorded because I really love doing it. So like some weeks I'll record 5 episodes, and then, I'll have, like right now I probably have like 8 to 10 episodes like already like lined up and ready to go, which is just, it is nice now, but I would say to get started, you don't need to do that. You should just get going. And then, like you said, you learn along the way. Like if I didn't release that first episode and then start making it and putting it out there, I never would have, like the podcast wouldn't be what it is today.
Right.
And you wouldn't learn from getting those pointers from your audience.
So the moral is don't sit in a room with a 3-year-old baby.
I was going to say, give birth. Give birth. That's going to be the name of this podcast. Give birth. I'm going to write that down.